For the last decade, the primary bottleneck to my performance has been my sleep, whether it's been going to bed and not being able to switch off, waking up, being unable to get back to sleep, or just feeling wrecked in the morning despite getting in what I thought was enough hours. But over the last 9 months, I've finally been able to take tight control of my sleep, and it's done wonders for my performance. So in today's video, I'm sharing the 8 simple habits that have really turned things around for me. But before we get into that, I want to touch on some of the strategies that I don't recommend, as some of these are growing increasingly popular, unfortunately. Tracking and making decisions based on sleep scores. Most trackers now provide composite score metrics. So these are single numbers, usually out of 100, generated by aggregating a bunch of different metrics through a proprietary algorithm. So Whoop Strain or Garmin's body battery metrics are prime examples of this. But here's why these scores are objectively next to worthless. They're not well validated. So these algorithms have very little, if any, peer-reviewed human data validating their accuracy. Whoop even had a funny paper in Golfers published recently, and the CEO was bragging about it on LinkedIn, about how good the results were and all of that. But when you actually read the paper, and in particular the limitations, it's as if the golfers improved their sleep in spite of using the Whoop, not because of it, which is what you would expect. The nocebo effect. Some people also find that these scores can trigger sleep anxiety, or something called orthosomnia, which is an obsession with achieving perfect sleep. If you wake up feeling great, but your tracker tells you that you're in the red, it's going to fuck with your thoughts and behaviors a little bit. I've done this in the past, and I now see it as being idiotic. And lastly, the data is opaque. I often think that these scores are the wearable equivalent of proprietary blends and supplements. You may have an idea of what metrics contribute to the score, but you don't know the dose or how much they influence it. So a much better option is to use more direct, transparent metrics that are 9 times out of 10 free. Now, if you are currently making training or lifestyle decisions based on a composite score like Strain, I would strongly recommend you reconsider to something more simple like total sleep duration. You'll save money and probably perform at a higher level more consistently. Changing your routine when traveling. There's likely going to be some disruption, especially if you're traveling internationally. But for the most part, try to keep your routine consistent and stick to your pre-sleep non-negotiables. And if that means hitting your 10,000 steps by pacing around the terminal like a madman instead of sitting at the bar for 2 hours, do it. I definitely need to take my own advice on this. Keeping total sleep duration constant when stress is high. So an extra 30 to 60 minutes can go a really long way here. If you're pushing harder in your training or in your work, you need to respect the fact that you're going to need to lean a little bit more into relaxation and recovery also. If you don't, this tends to result in more significant mood and energy fluctuations, especially as the weeks start to accumulate and fatigue starts to build. One of my clients just competed in the Glasgow Hyrox event a couple of weeks ago, and she done really well. But she told me last night how shattered she'd been all week in the aftermath, which is totally normal. She'd been pushing so hard week after week that when the event finished and a break was scheduled, her body was basically forcing her to rest. So in an ideal world, when stress is accumulating, slightly dialing up recovery as well is useful. Now let's get into the habits that have been working really well for me. And the good thing about them is that they don't require much thought or expense. Sticking to a consistent sleep-wake schedule. So from my understanding, your body likes stable sleep times to align melatonin release and core body temperature changes. When it's more irregular, this misalignment causes disruption. What I've been doing here is just setting an alarm for 10 p.m. as a cue to tell me it's time to start thinking about going to bed. And it's been working great. Hitting the baseline amount of activity per day. So I've been hitting 10,000 steps per day for about the last 250 days, or since the middle of last June. And I find that my sleep onset, which is the time in which it takes me to fall asleep, has massively improved. In the past, where I was hitting 3,000 to 4,000 steps per day, I found that I would go to bed with a lot of built up energy and really just struggle to switch off. But this has pretty much solved that. Using environmental sleep aids. I was in a hotel in Lisbon last week where my sleep wasn't good, and I can mostly pinpoint why. The thermostat was too high, there was a fan humming through the night whenever I lowered the thermostat, and the curtains weren't fully blackout. So in an ideal scenario, cool, dark, and quiet are the conditions we want. And the easy way to achieve this, even in a foreign environment, is to use a high-quality blackout eye mask and some earplugs, which I thankfully did on the following nights. If you can't control for temperature, pre-sleep hot shower for 10 to 15 minutes is also a great option. Setting cutoff times for stimulants, food, fluids, and work. In the Brian Johnson Netflix movie, I think he says that he eats all his meals before 11 a.m. to protect his sleep score. I wouldn't experiment with that, but what I would experiment with is implementing more reasonable cutoffs. The ones I use are no stimulants after 12 p.m. and no food, fluids, or work after 8 p.m., so 3 hours before bed. I also have an alarm that goes off at 8 p.m., which is a good cue to stop. You know you're getting old when clock is one of the most used apps on your phone. Following a set morning routine, I had a couple of friends in university who used to take the piss out of me for taking my morning routine so seriously. And one of them ended up becoming a client years later, and now he swears by his morning routine. So for me, this is mostly about getting in 5,000 steps before work and keeping my caffeine intake consistently dosed and timed. This basically means that I'm not having PM hits of caffeine or stressing about activity late into the evening. But I recommend a lot of iteration here and keeping it simple and anti-Huberman-esque. Following a set bedtime routine, my understanding here is that having a set of steps you follow before bed act as subtle cues that your body starts to associate with imminent sleep. This again seems to help with faster sleep onset. Now, my own structure for this is simple, which is actually a common theme with health strategy in most populations. It's more often than not pretty idiot proof. I finish work, the lights are dimmed, I take a shower, I brush my teeth, and I relax for 2 hours with a TV show or a film, which brings me on to the next point. Relaxing for 2 hours before bed. What are the 1 to 2 activities in the evening that make you feel properly relaxed and get you into a parasympathetic state? A lot of the time when recovery is mentioned, people automatically think of ice baths and foam rolling and adding in shit, when for the most part, subtracting and relaxing is what's going to be best. It's common to hear about how pro athletes are some of the most sedentary populations on the planet, and that's very much by design. Relaxing plays a huge part in the recovery. So if you have the luxury of 2 free hours in the evening to relax and disassociate, I would absolutely use them. Keeping the bed as a sleep-only zone. Back in early 2025, I had this horrible habit of scrolling TikTok while lying in bed, to the point where I compromised my total sleep duration just to scroll. Do not do this. It might seem harmless, but if you're going to scroll, I think doing it earlier in the day is probably best, or none at all. That way, when you actually get into bed, you're met with a strong cue to sleep quickly. There's also going to be some nuances to your own context. Maybe you love going to sleep on a full stomach or drinking espresso after dinner, you weirdo. If that's you and it's not disturbing your sleep, by all means stick with it. So these are what I've found have worked well for me. I think it should broadly be similar for most contexts, but play around with them and see what suits you best. You'll also be able to build on this if you're a true human performance nerd, but you can absolutely make a case that less is more here. Now, in my experience, the main barrier to sleep strategy implementation is decision fatigue. Running through a full pre-bed routine after a long day at work can feel like a lot, especially when you just want to throw your clothes in the corner of the room and hop into bed. If you don't have the bandwidth to adopt a bunch of new habits, don't. Just lean into the few that feel somewhat effortless to you in your current routine. The last thing I'll say on this, if you're already sleeping well, I don't recommend adding in even more shit to do. If you're waking up feeling refreshed, feeling healthy, and performing well, then those are leading indicators that your sleep is very much on point and no changes are likely needed. If you enjoyed this video, I want to keep learning, check out my last video up here. And if you want to work with me inside my performance accelerator, click the first link in the description.